Terry. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Do you hear me okay? Microphone works. And thank you to the three other panelists. I'm really happy to be sitting here with three people who have so much to tell. The topic of the day is Brussels' good name in contemporary art. We know that Brussels made the international headlines, was in the New York Times a few times this year, unfortunately, usually for not very positive reasons, and often also for art. So we're going to talk about what makes that name so exciting on the international scene, what the qualities are here, and how to protect that going forward, how things could evolve. So first, I would like to ask all three of our panelists, because everybody has a slightly different role in the arts, what they consider to be relevant art today, and in their position, which criteria they use to think about that, to consider it, and to go further with a particular artist or artwork. So we will start right here with Liv.
Yes, hi. That's a very, interesting and tricky question to answer. I founded Propositions 5 years ago, and last year I moved to Independence, which is the New York-born fair that was founded in 2010 and had its first edition last year. And those two fairs are extremely different in the sense that Propositions was much more grassroots, younger initiative. But what was for me the criteria is quality, and also quality, relevance, having something that makes you think, that is different, that triggers an interest, and not just having the nice decorative art to put above your sofa, which I guess is a bit an obvious things to say. But
thank you.
What is art? And we have an hour and a half for all of us. I think for me, it's I don't have a collecting urge. I have a sharing urge, an exhibiting urge. So when I see work that I find really exciting, I want to share that, and I want to make exhibitions of that work and share it with an audience and share my enthusiasm about it. What gets me enthusiastic about artwork, I would say it's work that makes me see the world in a different way. It's work that makes me laugh, work that makes that challenges me, work that is difficult to find words for. Also interested in the kind of undescribability, it's not a word, but we'll use it now, of visual art, and the fact that even in our age of virtual reality, of being connected everywhere all the time and knowing about everything, I still believe in the importance of the perhaps old-fashioned, but for me still valuable, white cube experience of being with a work of art, whatever form that might take, and spending time with it, encountering it, enjoying it. So I think that doesn't really answer your question. Perhaps there's a little bit about where I'm coming from. And then I've worked as a freelance curator and within institutions, and now working at WIELS. Of course, when I'm looking at work, I'm not just thinking about what interests me alone, but what makes sense in the WIELS program, what makes sense in the lineage of what we've already done, what kind of strands of programming we should continue, what things we should rethink as we reach our 10th anniversary, as we go from being the new kid on the block to the, I don't know what we are now, the semi-established figure, but still slightly out of center, still slightly marginal is the wrong word, but
edgy.
Not entirely institutionalized, despite being an institution. So in terms of programming, then I kind of look at the way that my own passions can fit with the arguments, with the lines of work that we defend and create at WIELS.
Thank you. Yeah, I think my particular question was going towards that specific part about being in an institution and how that frames your viewpoint and what the viewpoint of the institution can be. But we'll come back to that. Thank you very much. And Alain?
Yeah, art It's important to ask oneself the question. I very often ask myself why I found important to defend and even to spend time with art. And I believe that if we have a broader view of society, I strongly believe that art is an area of discussion, of thinking, which is important, of exchange of ideas. I enjoy a definition of art. There's hundreds of them. I have 5 or 6 pages covered with them, different. But one which I think sum up quite well what it is art is a language, because it's the artist telling me something, which opens your heart, because it's always, it's more not only intellectual, it can create an emotional impact to the other, and the other is a big O. And when you understand this, it's opening a dialogue. You're opening to dialogue. For me, art must be opening myself to something I don't understand, don't know, don't ask, don't see. And so we agree, I think, from that point of view. And today, I think we definitely need art more than ever, to kind of think outside of the box, because we definitely are in a point in time when we need to think outside of the box. About collecting, yes, of course, there's always that opposition between kind of institution and collectors, which are the one that are hoarding. We are not really hoarding. I think from the experience I have with my community of collectors here in Brussels, and we have here Nathalie Guyot as well, who created that foundation. Very quickly after the hoarding, in some way, the accumulation, there's a desire of sharing, and that's where we are very complementary, I think, from the institutions, or whether it's proposition or whether it's the WIELS. I think the WIELS is quite widely supported by the collecting community, and very well supported. So it's a question of sharing very quickly. So for me, it's about, of course, with my modest contribution, modest or not so modest maybe, how can we broaden the dialogue, expand the vision? And very often I see many collectors, which when you ask them what is the most valuable part of your collecting activity, it's the sharing. And when I see here in Brussels, for example, that you can enjoy a public visit, just registering on a Saturday, and still too few people go, but with the Van Arens collection, that you still can have the chance of having Walter Van Arens on your back, listening to what he said and listening to the question and so on. I really find that amazing and fascinating. So, yes, collectors are not just wealthy pigs. They are also hoarders. I think they are very wide sharers, and this is what we're trying to do, and we'd like to share it with Brussels.
Thank you. So we'll stay with you for a second. If we go back to the forum's topic about the good name to defend, and if we think about a contemporary art landscape, what are the different bodies or actors that are necessary to nourish and then to grow and sustain such a landscape? Can you just kind of go over the pillars quickly and sketch that?
Yeah, it's funny because when you travel a lot, I was in Copenhagen with Cologne this year, and even New Delhi. And when you're traveling, you suddenly ask yourself, people could ask you, how was it? And then you realize that there are things missing. For example, I was in New Delhi, and I was in one non-profit, and I was asking, okay, is there any other non-profit? And they said, no, there's none. So I said, what are you telling me? There's a 30 million city and there's one non-profit? I mean, Brussels, we have the walk.be, and there are 13 registered at least, and there are many more, but I can name you 13. So I realized that, when you're talking about an ecosystem of an art scene, for me, an art scene is an ecosystem, the same way as you need different elements to make your fish tank work well. What are the elements you need to make it successful? And I really, across the cities I had the chance to visit, I would say you're starting from the base. You need the good art schools, which are nourishing the dynamism of the city. From there, you need non-profits, which are the first step for the artists or the creators, the creative people, to kind of show their work. And there's some cities where you have very little. give examples. Sao Paulo, huge city for art, but you don't know where to see art which is not the one from the galleries. Then you need a good gallery system, a dynamic with different kind of levels of galleries, Art Basel galleries, but also very basic galleries. You need collectors as well, because all this needs money to be spent on it. Otherwise, you are in trouble. You need also an audience which is open-minded, ready to look at different things. And again, we are very fortunate in Brussels. I think we're one of the most appreciated public. I always remember when I was a kid, when I was going to see David Bowie or Duran, all big artists was always coming to Brussels at one point, despite being such a small, ridiculous city, and not even talking about the market, because we have a fantastic audience. We need also the relay for it. We need the press, and we need the critics, because what show are you going to see in the 50 proposition that there is, and how do you know where to find the things? And you need also to wrap it up. The public authorities support to make sure that the mayonnaise is coming up at the end of the day. And you need also, of course, good museums and institutions, because they are the kind of the anchor of the quality of the discourse that is made. Because they are opening up. I really consider that I learn what I know about art in museums, and I'm so absolutely fanatic of museums everywhere I'm going. So you could almost do a typology of different cities in the world to say what is missing. Berlin is missing collectors. Paris is missing the open-minded audience. But they have a strong public support. So you could do a kind of typology of different cities from that point of view. And then you look at Brussels. What about Brussels? And if you look at the different things, we're fantastic. We have excellent art schools. We have an amazing number of non-profits, and that's, I think, what is the most remarkable about Brussels is the grassroots efforts, the initiative that are not asking anything to anyone, and they just pop up for things. I forgot to mention two technical elements which are very important: communication, transport communication. We have the biggest base of Ryanair in the continental Europe. We're in the center of the biggest network of train. It's very important in comparison, for example, with Berlin, where artists are sometimes tired of that. We have also relatively cheap housing. I was helping a group of 5 artists coming from Nice and relocating to Molenbeek. And they could not believe that they could find, for €1,500 a month, they could find 1,200 square meters of very raw buildings, but they could do it. And they said, and it's nice because I'm closer from Paris. So for them, being in Nice. So, that's kind of element with many things, with fantastic institution, with the WIELS, Beaux-Arts, Argos, which are, European or world-class things. We have good collectors, which are opening up more and more initiatives. Van Arens, Frédéric de Goldschmidt, Nathalie Guyot, and others. So overall, we have fantastic galleries. Overall, we are a very strong base, and that's why people want to compare us to Berlin. The question is, what is missing?
And the question is also, do we want to be like Berlin?
I think we'll never be Berlin, because they're wilder than us. But I would rather ask the question, why are the Belgian Devils never winning? Why are we not putting the goals when we have all the qualities? And that's the interesting point. Why are we 200 kilometers away from Holland, and we're losing Caterpillar today, and we have no domestic bank except KBC, when they have ING, they have ABN AMRO, they have Royal Dutch, they have, and so on. So what about Belgium? Something is missing. And I think definitely it's the kind of the vision and the leadership that is missing. To put all those fantastic ingredients that we have and that we cannot put together. And that's really one of the key things. We're also missing, one of the points I mentioned is that I'm always astonished that I know more easily what's going on in London, Berlin, Paris, New York, Sao Paulo, than it was going on in Brussels. Because there are no critics. The journals, the newspapers are not writing about contemporary art, except some fantastic publication, Hearts, and some others, but we're missing really a kind of central, influential, where good writers are writing critic about the things. I don't know what kind of
I
sources.
don't know. I think having worked for a long time in the Netherlands and being from the UK and seeing the way that in both those countries and both those art scene, well, let's say the London art scene, because it's not the same as the UK art scene, the way that contemporary art has become very popular, very accessible, which are both very good things, but has also been pushed more and more towards entertainment, is being considered more and more as tourism, and the kind of journalism that then emerges from that repositioning. I was really very pleasantly surprised when I moved to Belgium and found the quality of the writing here, the fact that there is a kind of a culture of culture. Culture still has a very important inherent
What do you
place.
read? Just tell me. I'm happy to learn. What do you like to read from Belgian writers?
I don't want to name names right now.
Just publications.
Even De Morgen or La Libre. I find the quality of the art criticism I find very high. I wish there was more of it. I wish there was more coverage. But I find that
for me, they cover more abroad than Belgium. The La Libre particularly. That's the only one I'm reading. That's what you mentioned. But they prefer to cover an exhibition in Cologne or in Paris than cover something happening in Belgium.
We have La Même.
Yes, of course. But it's monthly. It's a monthly.
Well, let me put the spotlight back to you, Zoe, for a second.
Can I just respond to something that
Please,
Alain said?
Please.
One of the things that attracted me to Brussels, because I came here before I worked for WIELS. I came here in the hope of one day working for WIELS, but I came here before I was attached to the institution. So I moved here as a freelance curator, and it was this like diversity of, it was the diversity of the city that really attracted me. The fact that there is this very rich ecosystem, that it's active on all these different levels, that there is this strong commercial scene, but there's also this very strong like self-organized artist-run scene and good institutions. And this, like the mixity of languages, the kind of hybridized city that it is, I think is one of its major strengths. The fact that there isn't one dominant art scene, there's not one kind of school. I think is a real richness, particularly given the scale of the city, which is relatively small. But it has this incredible quality in all of its, not all, in a lot of its programming, a lot of its institutions. And yet I think that this diversity, this multiplicity is also the weakness when it comes to there not being leadership. When it comes to this kind of things fall between the cracks, things that could create an amazing synergy are not being supported or organized as well as they could be. So there's kind of two sides of the same coin.
I want maybe to precise something. It's not that have a leadership doesn't mean standardization.
No.
What I mean by leadership is that I'm sad to hear when I'm traveling that Brussels is considered as one of Europe's best kept secrets, which means that you are traveling here. Katerina Kregos, we had the chance to have those wonderful curators moving here. But in a way, they're coming and they know the place. But when you're going around Brussels on a Thursday night, if you don't know where to go, it can look like a ghost city in many ways. So that's what I'm talking about. It's about, making the quality of Brussels known abroad. Mm-hmm. And that's why, maybe, you can speak about it, but that's what this initiative of Indiscipline, which is happening this weekend, or showing the creativity of Belgium and the Palais de Tokyo in Paris, is a good initiative. So I'm not all negative. I'm just saying, unfortunately, it's risks to be a one shot, and I hope it's not too amateur, because very great things that Brussels and Belgium organize is very amateurish on an international basis. So I hope it will be fine.
It's a nice kind of plug / provocation he's giving.
No, but it's the truth. Let's be honest.
Can I explain what it is
sure.
for those who don't know? So, Indiscipline or Indiscipline is a 2-day festival of transdisciplinary arts from Brussels, which is organized by WIELS together with the Kunstenfestival des Arts and Wallonie-Bruxelles Danse Théâtre. and is a program of 30 artists who are based here, whose work we are showing at the Palais de Tokyo. And it's supported by Visit Brussels, so it is supported by promotional money. It is also...
The region. It's the region.
Yeah, the region. It's the Fédération Wallonie-Bruxelles. But it's, what I find interesting is it's money coming through channels of promotion, of branding, of city branding. And for us, it's an exciting opportunity to do something, to work with artists we believe in, to be able to give artists an international platform at the Palais de Tokyo, which is a pretty nice platform. But it's also interesting, as you say, to see what becomes of that, what follows up from that. How do we make a kind of a sustainable dynamic out of that? Because for institutions like WIELS, we're finding that it's more and more of the funding, which was cultural funding, is now promotional funding. So how do you work with that in a way that is interesting for the institutions, for the artists, for the public, without kind of having your ethos and your aims, your role kind of détourné, like shifted slightly.
Without too much compromise.
Without too much compromise, yeah.
I'm curious because the points that you mentioned, I mean, for me, this is the Brussels story. Like the charms of Brussels, the beauty, it's always been a crossroads. It's got New York's diversity, but in a very small scale. It's chaotic, it's badly organized in some ways, and it functions really well. But all of this fragmentation doesn't serve a single goal ever. So that's something that we face here, and it's the double-edged sword. Mm. But if I can put the pressure on you a little bit, so when Alain mentioned the different pillars, one that he mentioned as being a little bit absent is vision or leadership for the whole pie. So if we get over the linguistic divides, the regional divides, and we just talk about the city, WIELS is a vision that's important to the city. You mentioned the growing up process. You opened in 2007, going on the 10-year anniversary. How does WIELS position itself looking at the next 10 years? What's your vision for Brussels and your role in Brussels?
Well, we're very much, next year is our 10th anniversary, and instead of doing something kind of self-congratulatory, which I think is the tempting thing to do when one has had a kind of a rough opening few years and then has managed to survive and grow as WIELS has done, we're organizing a project called the Absent Museum, which will be a large-scale exhibition together with the collaboration with the Kunst- Festival des Arts. And it's really questioning, like, what kind of institution does Brussels need? What kind of institution does Europe need as well? Is it another museum? Because there is much discussion of a museum. Is it an institution like WIELS? What kind of institution could WIELS become? How do we look back and look forward? You know, these kind of structural questions we're putting at the heart of the program next year. And I think that by doing so and by working with artists, because the idea is to work with some 40 artists who are based in the wider Brussels region, and we're really looking as far as like London, Cologne, Paris, Amsterdam, and within that kind of scope, to show work that we feel is from that community, which is our community. So I think I don't know what our vision for the next 20 years is, but we're trying to kind of put these like structural questions into the program as a way to test things out, as a way to try them out, also in public, to create debate. So maybe we know more next summer.
Philosophy in action.
Yeah.
Putting the ideas to practice. That's interesting. Yeah, so I'll go to Liv now. When you created Propositions, you mentioned feeling an absence in the landscape of something that was a bit edgier or different, or you used the word pale before. Can you talk about that? So you created something that was new. There was obviously a place for it. Now we're 4 years later or 5 years later?
There was a 5th edition this year.
5th edition? Okay. So how has the event changed? And do you think it still serves the same role it did in the beginning in putting something new into Brussels?
Yeah, that was really every year the challenge with Propositions, because it started as a really spontaneous grassroots initiative, a very, very short notice as well. At the time, I was actually, I'm French and Dutch, so I'm also, I'm not Belgian. And I was also attracted to Belgium for, similar reasons that Zoe said. And I've traveled a lot, and I saw that there was lacking the platform for all the interesting initiatives they were bargaining in Brussels. And we're talking now 2010, and at the time during the Art Brussels Week, there was not much happening. Now it's completely saturated, but if you remember 2010, there was barely anything happening. And all those initiatives didn't have a platform, and I thought it was a good initiative to put them forward and enjoy the fact that we had foreigners and everybody's excited because of the Art Brussels Week to put them forward. But it started with 6 people in a train station, in a Congress train station, really basically putting something together and splitting the bill. And then the next year, I launched an open call, wondering whether anyone will answer. And we had about 50, 70 proposals, like strong proposals, free. We had the Brass next to WIELS for free, and we realized suddenly a lot of support. Collectors came in, wanted to support. Alain is one of our early supporters, Frédéric de Goldschmidt. And every year it kind of grew. We got more and more interest. So Proposition had to also reinvent itself because Art Brussels changed. There was suddenly non-profits being invited, and the landscape of the city also changed. So every year it's always the same question: is it still relevant, or is it still necessary? So there's been also a sort of constant reinvention of the concept every year. What Proposition will become in the future, I can't say because it's no longer in my hand. We have a new team headed by Nicolas de Ribou, who's somewhere in the team, in the public, and they did a fantastic job this year. And I'm curious where it will lead in the future.
Okay.
But I'd like to rebound on what Zoe said about, spontaneous generation. The funny thing is, every good thing has a bad side, and every bad side has a good side. In a way, in Brussels, when you start something, you never think, okay, I'm going to ask the state for support, because the time it happens, the deluge will be back already. So you just try to find a solution. Contrary to, for example, a city like in Paris, where you say, the state should do more. I would call the state or the minister, blah 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 blah. So we have a spontaneous generation, and that's what is a fantastic energy. And I really don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I'm extremely positive on that. The problem is that art scene, and you were asking me about what about the past and vis-a-vis the present, and Liv was referring to the fact that 5 years ago there was nothing, and now there is independent Proposition, another art fair, French art fair, and plus some others events. The problem is what I feel as a collector is that I feel that, and we have, for example, 40 world-class galleries now in Brussels. But I hear some of the people coming in that are already leaving. We lost Paris Beijing, left. Rod Barton will probably leave as well. So what I'm quite sorry is that they are sort of disappointed. And we can discuss about it as well, but Independent was also a little bit disappointed by the public response this year. So where I'm worried is that I see that spontaneous energy, which is a wonderful energy, and really, I'm really proud of it. The thing is that if we don't bring more attention from international visitors, this ecosystem is not sustainable. It's too large. And that's where I'm getting critical and worried, is that if we don't do anything, we could suddenly, like we do always in Belgium, it's kind of, it's like scattering away and disappearing, and we go back to that we still see great art, and the will still be there, and some sort of whatever initiative, it will still be there. But we have the chance of really supporting a fantastic ecosystem, which is everything we like. And we need to push on the accelerator at this point, because the world is looking at us. I mean, we had 2 features in the New York Times, you said it, and many others. I was joking about that comparison with Berlin, which I personally hate. But that's the way the journalists like it. But we had a couple of features about this. So when do we win? And that's why I'm making the comparison with the Belgian Devils. When do we win something? I mean, and that's where I would like to have more thinking about what are the weaknesses, where do we need to reinforce. And I think the first reinforcement is to get Brussels out of a kind of a provincial vision from outside, not from us, because we feel we are very dynamic and there's a lot of things happening, but from the outside. People should visit Brussels more. It's really a very exciting art scene. And that's a little bit the point.
And to bounce on that, I mean, to speak about why Independent came. Independent is a New York fair that is quite, well beloved in New York because it has a very original format. It was one of the first fair to be very democratic in the sense that all galleries are treated the same. There's not really, there's no white cubes, walls. It's very open and nice. It's like a nice experience fair. So Independent has half of its galleries that come from Europe. So the idea was to also give a home to those European galleries and then invite American galleries and from further abroad and grow the network. And Brussels came as an obvious reason, but I also think from the founders of Independent, they knew the good reputation is growing. Brussels is New Berlin, but also this, as we mentioned earlier, and I'll mention this ideal geographic situations, 2 hours from Amsterdam, Paris, London, Cologne. I wouldn't say that we were disappointed, and of course there was the attacks 4 weeks before, and I think it really took a heavy toll on visitors. But indeed, Brussels is not a sexy destination from first glance for a lot of people. And I'm half Dutch, and I see how the Dutch are very self-promoters and very always strongly promoting everything they do. And Belgians are much more modest. I always find them very modest and indeed not promoting themselves enough. And I totally agree that we really need to capitalize on what's happened and make it much more attractive, much more visible abroad. And that's also what Independent wants to do by being here, not just being this American fair that comes once a year and leave, but really try to use our name to attract more foreigners, to show them what Brussels is on a wider scope.
I think if I compare with the Netherlands, there's such a strong kind of cultural branding that goes on via organizations such as the Mondrian Fund, who have succeeded for a long time and with some serious means to promote Dutch artists abroad, to support Dutch galleries to go to fairs, which is something I have slight mixed feelings about, because I think it becomes very complicated using public money to support galleries depending on how those galleries function. But I think they've been very successful in exporting Dutch artists. I don't think the commercial scene is that vibrant in the Netherlands, perhaps because there's been so much public money, which is now less and less the case, although still well funded. But I think that there's such a difference because also the country is much more unified. Here, I think the fact that there are so many different Belgiums, depending on who you're talking to, and there's so many different pots of money, depending on which publics you speak to, which languages you use, can create this kind of falling between the gaps that I was trying to evoke earlier. So, for example, the what used to be BAM, the Flanders Art Institute, in terms of my network of international curators, they bring visiting curators from all over the world and organize very good research trips around Flanders, which includes Brussels, but there's not the equivalent, or if there is, it's not as well funded or as visible from the French-speaking community. And there's not one body which is doing this for Brussels. Possibly there never will be, but I think that's one of the failings, is that there's so much internal competition within the country that there's not this unified front, let's say.
Yeah, this is the sharp side of the double-edged sword. I think that's I would say a Belgian problem, or a very Brussels problem in every sector of life. Recently talking about the public authorities and how they're seeing arts, I had two experiences. One with the city and region of Brussels, who are financing a public project, and they wanted to talk about artists all the time as social workers, and they wanted to talk about participation without any real methodology. And then with European Commission, they wanted to talk about artists as designers, so something that could go to market with a prototype and have an immediate return. And it seemed like there was a general feeling on both sides to need to find continued ways to support the arts, therefore making these new channels, yet a lot of confusion about what the role of art could be in a society. Mm-hmm. And so when you talk about all those fragments and different visions, I wonder, like, at WIELS, how do you juggle that? Because I don't naturally know. Like, so do you have to put on those different hats and say, this is a promotion show, this is a participation show, or to run different initiatives? How do you deal with those visions?
Well, we have many strands of activity, not just our exhibition program. We also have the residency program, and which has different strands of funding and has different outcomes, as a funding body might call it. And we have the educational strand of activity. WIELS is very much this like three-pronged institution. So but they're kind of they're interlaced in quite an interesting way, because what we try and have is also some interaction between these three prongs, so they don't become totally separate, parallel things that we're doing and therefore speaking in totally different ways to different audiences. We try that there are interactions between them. But for example, the festival Superflieg Supermouche, which is something that WIELS has been piloting, but very much together with other associations, works together with 60 other non-profit associations in Forêt and Saint-Gilles to create this once-a-year festival, arts festival for children. It's not particularly branded as a WIELS thing. Last year, I think we had 10,000 visitors in one day. It's a one-day thing in terms of its public visibility, but it is also many months of preparation, of production by artists. There are lots and lots of new commissions, and lots of workshops with children, workshops with different social groups that kind of culminate in this one festive moment. Then there are the exhibitions, which I would say all of the shows that we do are kind of socially engaged in the fact that all of the work is questioning work, whether it's Simon Denny, who is, let's say, a darling of the contemporary art scene, but is also someone who's asking extremely pointed questions about our society, our communication means, who's controlling them, who knows what about whom, how technology is changing our world, or someone like Edith de Kint, who makes work that is indirectly but very evocatively speaking about our current era and the way that humans are impacting the environment so extensively. So I think we're kind of, we wear many different hats at once, but we try to do that in a way that is coherent rather than fragmentary.
Yeah, no, that made sense in your explanation perfectly. Yeah. So, okay, we've talked about the kind of very positive sides in Brussels, the conditions of the city, the art landscape, and that we want to win a game. So Roberto Martinez didn't give you any results.
Yeah, no, for sure. He's disappointed. But I wanted to come back on this because we spoke about the public. I don't like to hide myself behind the public because, of course, there's weaknesses in the layering of the system and so on. But it's not only this, as you are very aware, Harlan, as well, is that there is also a provincialism spirit that we have to leave as well on the private side. You know, I'll be very direct because I can say it, but I don't like the way that the Belgian galleries, again, in comparison with the rest of the world, don't have any standardized opening hours. You know, I'm very ashamed sometimes when I get some important visitors on a Wednesday and I don't know which gallery is going to be open because some are opening on Thursday, some are closing during lunchtime, and so on. I mean, we need to, if we want to broaden up, we need to be a little bit, more helpful to the visitors in some way. I recommend it also very often. Why don't you adjust yourselves to what the general public would like? I mean, that when I was working in a bank, from 8:30 to 6:30, I could not visit galleries really because, my only day was maybe the Saturday. They were not always open. And then I had my kids to take care. I mean, why not opening, I don't know, 2 Thursday evening until 10 p.m., for example, to make it easy. The same with the Art Brussels independent situation. Yes, I was disappointed to hear that there was an impossibility for a gallery which was participating to Art Brussels to participate to independent as well, which has been introduced quite late in the system. But I don't understand why there should be kind of competition. Why is it not possible to do both if you want to do both? There's not a question of allegiance of who you are. So we need to open up also the ideas from the private sides to make it the collaboration easier. Collaboration easier with the institution. I think it works pretty well with the collectors, more or less, but we could improve the relationship to the private institutions with the collectors, because I keep saying it. We have some of the best private collection in Europe, but we're not using them. The museum are not really using them. The connection and the contacts are not always natural from that point of view. So we need to make some efforts to, again, in the idea of promoting the ecosystem as a whole, we need to open up a little bit the mind. And I remember the last page of a book from Edward Winckelmann in New York. He said, in those times of changes, some people who had little powers in a little corner must accept to give up that supposedly power, regional or local power, to benefit to a larger project. But we still have some, kind of little power places where people don't want to share what they have and so on because they think, oh, this guy is going to take my thing. No, let's think about a broader ecosystem, and we need to leave that kind of mentality of petty competition, which is very, very damaging in some way and useless. So we should be able to create a real organization which is opened up to galleries, newcomers. It's very well known that we have a supposedly NECA, which is a semi-private initiative about that map of contemporary art. But to enter, there's supposed to be a committee, but nobody knows if there is a committee gathering. What are they doing, and so on. So it's kind of petty little things that are making it more difficult to kind of broadcast the Belgian ecosystem, the Brussels ecosystem, to the outside.
A lot of things aren't transparent in the private sector, for sure. With NECA, that was my experience. Also in opening a business here, though I'd been here 10 years already in different fields, it wasn't very easy to get information. And I think that's a problem across the board. But again, I find that a problem that I experience as a foreigner who calls this home for a long time in every aspect of my kind of administrative life here. So all the things we're talking about, I mean, even with the opening hours, because I used to open on Sundays. I was located in the center of town by St. Catherine. I would open on a Sunday, and sometimes I would do great because people could come. But often I'd be there myself because nothing was open in the area on the Sundays. It's not in the city culture. Shops were closed. Cafes were closed. The bars even would close, some of them. So no one passed in that neighborhood. Yeah. So of course, then it's my job to bring people. I get that. But it's the same with the shops on Rue Neuve who voted this week that opening on a Sunday once a month was a loss of business for them and decided not to do it. So somehow there has to be a tie-in to other parts of civic life. And I think that's one thing that I noticed, like, in talking about how to improve the image of Brussels abroad with regard to what's been happening like outside of the art world here. The art world provides a great way to build that image abroad. Yet it doesn't seem, except like with the exception of what's going on this weekend in Paris, which is a great example, I haven't heard that many other examples of the city coming to work with the art landscape or using that as a key export.
I mean, there are plans afoot or already inscribed, for example, via Visit Brussels, to have the year of contemporary art, but I believe it's in 2 years' time. So there is an understanding, I would say, on behalf of the region of Brussels, that contemporary art can be a useful tool in its totality. I'm not talking about using individual artists, but as a tool for the city. But there seems to be a mismatch between the kind of sense of urgency that you were evoking and the administrative time frames where things, we plan now to do the year of contemporary art in 2 years' time. But in the meantime, where does that energy, where does that force go, you know?
Yeah, but that's really, I mean, a 2-year vision is still a vision, and things take time to get off the ground. So
Sure.
that's very optimistic.
Yeah.
So,
But I wanted to just extend a little bit on your example of downtown. You know, as a Brussels guy, I was very happy to have uptown and downtown at the time. And I really liked the life that was downtown. You know, the Galeries, Bastide, Mott International, Vidal Cuglietta. You remember that Estonian gallery as well.
Tulips and Roses.
Tulips and Roses. We had a fantastic ecosystem down there. And, you know, rent were cheaper and... But we had at one point some amazing things. What happened is that I told them many times, because they were starting complaining, not people visiting enough. Why don't you kind of differentiate you from the uptown by being open on Sunday? Okay, just close on Wednesday, but open on Sunday. And because there was not enough traffic, because of the traffic problems in Belgium, you cannot visit uptown and downtown on the same Saturday. You know, eventually people started moving up. Bastide moved up. Everyone started moving up. And now downtown is kind of dead, which is a bad thing for the whole ecosystem again, because it's more expensive to be uptown, which make it more difficult to be, adventurous in the showing. And it was lovely to go down, and I love to visit your gallery on a Sunday, when there were some barbershop open, and where better place to have a brunch than downtown Brussels, Jeu de Balle, and then you go down and everything is fantastic. Now, because of that kind of laziness, of lack of imagination, everybody's back uptown. Everybody's fighting very expensive rents to go uptown. When we could have kept the two clusters, I think uptown and downtown, by being a little bit more imaginative downtown. And when I say imaginative from the galleries, imaginative from the collectors as well. You know, why not going downtown? Obviously, it was before the piétonnier, which is might probably have made this situation even more difficult, because I haven't been downtown since the piétonnier. Even if I love downtown, but I don't want to be stuck for 2 hours in the traffic, and not knowing where to park. So that's again kind of mistakes we're making as a kind of a tourist city in some way.
But I think there's like one level of changes that could be made in terms of opening hours, access, things like that. But I think there's also on a deeper level, there needs to be a commitment from the public authorities. And again, because there are so many overlapping ones, it's going to be very difficult for that to happen. But I think what I would hope for is that there would be a recognition of the inherent value, social value of having a dynamic art scene, of having so many artists who choose to come and live here, of having so many artists who grow up here and choose to stay, and that should be kind of inscribed somehow into what the city is about, on a very deep level. But I don't know, given the city that we live in, I don't know how that could happen, which is slightly demoralizing. But that would be my hope, that there is really a sense of in a city which is as rich as Brussels on so many levels of being rich, that there should be such a central place for culture, and visual art should be at the heart of that place.
Yeah. The potential of having people in Brussels for contemporary art and the quality of what we have is immense. I mean, I know the kind of collectors or visitors traveling, the groups. I mean, in the last year, we managed to have groups from Chinese museums traveling. I mean, you've seen them at the WIELS as well. I mean, the potential is huge. Plus, the artists relocating to Brussels, and yes, the potential is huge. And it's sad that we don't do more about it. Because I'm really afraid that if we lose that chance, it will not come back. And that's where my urgency is a little bit there, is that if the tide is moving back, because Brussels get a bad reputation, we like it, public is super nice, but we don't sell. Okay, fine, but I'm sorry, but only the Belgian or the Brussels community cannot support 45 galleries like we supported 20. I'm sorry, if we don't bring more energy from outside, it will not work. And at the end of the day, that dynamism means visitors, money, more curators coming, and we do a good job. There's a fantastic good job. But right now, I feel that we are at the edge, and if we don't push on the accelerator now, we could have people starting leaving and giving a bad reputation to Brussels, and that would be a pity.
We can also say that people who move here to start a business come into a landscape, like we said, where not everything is easily clear. And so the expectation that you could come into a place that has a hype about it and just find your way kind of dismisses the reality of building relationships over time. So part of that comment, I think we can write off to, without knowing the people, a little naivety to think you can just arrive somewhere that's warm and put your feet in the water. It takes a bit more time than that. But for the rest, I totally agree. And there was a boom in Brussels for sure, like not just WIELS, but galleries. You said 45, and I think that's about right now for contemporary galleries. But there were like 40 who opened between 2005 and 2015. And then from 2011 till 14, more than half of those closed. So there was already some recognition that there wasn't enough support here for the old model. And maybe in the new model, and artists who are doing different things like social participative work or performative work, or like working with companies in research labs and finding different ways to build their practice. These things are still very possible here. But so what would you like to see happen? Like Zoë, going forward, what would you like to see in Brussels? If you could like be imaginative, have a dream, a wish, throw it out there, what would you like to see happen while you're here in the city about contemporary art?
Talking from a WIELS perspective, which is an institution which has always been a kind of a mixed, has had a mixed model of funding and of support, which goes beyond financial support from public authorities and the private sector. I think we hope that the private sector continues to support us and continues to work with us, and that we can find new ways to explore possibilities together in a really collaborative way. I think that can happen. What I would love would be if there would be more ambitious engagement on the part of the public authorities. We are supported by the Flemish community and the French-speaking community and the Brussels region and the Commune of Forêt. But if there could, there seems to always be this sort of looking amongst them, looking to see what the others are giving, what they're getting in return, and that means that it will always be rather piecemeal. And I guess what I was trying to say earlier was that what I would love to see happen would be to have more risk taking, but also more collaboration between those different partners, to have to kind of dare to support institutions more, because I don't believe that we are in the financial crisis that we're told we're in. I think that it's very much our society has to decide where its priorities lie, and I hope that the society decides that culture should still be very central, even more central than it has been in recent years, and that it's an inherently important thing for us all as humans, and whether that increases the tourism flows to Brussels and increases the economic growth in other fields. I think it would, and I think that would be great, but that's should be almost a secondary consideration. So, I look to the public authorities, but then they are...
Which ones?
Well, all of them, but they are our elected representatives, so maybe it's up to all of us to demand more ambition.
When you say up to us to demand, do you feel that there is a very engaged public here? Do you feel apathy? Do you feel, compared to other cities you've worked in, what's the response from the public in terms of that kind of engagement, or your colleagues in terms of that kind of engagement?
That's a good question. I wouldn't say there's apathy. No, I think there's I think there is an engagement, but I think again it's quite fragmented. There doesn't seem to be again the flip side of the coin. You know, there isn't a dominant school. There isn't one dominant group of artists or thinkers or galleries even. You know, there's always these like different scenes, different powers operating in parallel, overlapping. And maybe that also means that there's a kind of a fragmentation amongst a bigger social movement. I mean, I think it's difficult to talk about the you know, what's been happening in Brussels this year with the violence that has kind of shocked everybody. But what was striking was that there doesn't seem to have, no one seems to have found, and I certainly don't know how one would, a way of responding as a whole to the terrorist attacks, but also to the situation in which the country finds itself generally. There still seems so much, not infighting, that's the wrong word, but too many different voices talking against each other in parallel. I'm being too vague, but and I don't know what the solution is.
Well, that's a problem. Too many cooks in the kitchen can be a problem. And Liv, for independent in the next years, what's your wish? How would you like to think things change from last year or develop in the next few years?
Well, I think Independent came here with a hope and an aim to. I mean, I think the team of Independent truly love Brussels. It's really a genuine, honest thing. Although none of us are from Brussels or Belgians, which doesn't, I mean, but also it makes us see it as a more like, yeah, we're not from here, we're maybe more distant, but we want the city to live up to its reputation. And also, we have this hope that Brussels will grow really as a regional, an attractive pole. And when I speak regional, I mean Netherlands, I mean the Rhine region, London, Paris, and yeah, to truly live up to its reputation, from also, yeah, helping that all those artists that come here with a lot of hope won't leave within 1 year or two because they're disappointed. All those galleries won't leave. But yeah, we also, well, you guys talked at length about all those elements, and the magic touch would be that, yeah, the ambitions will be shared. I mean, as Independent, we don't ask any support from public. Also with Proposition, we applied for some funding. We were never understood as being a non-profit fair, because the idea of being a fair was more of a critic from the current system. And we never got much money, like once from the region of Brussels. And yeah, so things happen just fully self-funded. Of course, the fair model is, in a way, a more predictable one, but we also need our galleries, because Independent attracted galleries that never did Art Brussels, mostly. People that, yeah, didn't really know much about Brussels. We convinced them that Brussels was great and a place to come, and we want those people to keep coming. But of course, as Alain said, just Brussels or even just Belgium cannot cater for everyone. So we really want to have Brussels become this center, this pole of attraction. There's work to do still, a lot of work to do, different levels.
Okay. I think we're getting to the point.
Just finish my wish. Can I have my wish?
Oh, sorry. I was trying to...
Because I found it a funny wish. I would say my wish would be to Brussels to stop being the football Belgian Devils, the Red Devils, and becoming the hockey Red Devils. And I think it's pretty interesting because they are both Belgian, but look at the way they evolve. And, you know, it was one federation because we mentioned it. It's about a central authority deciding, you know, 10 years ago we were ridiculous. We want to change this and we're going to change the whole system as a whole. And there was a leadership and vision. in hockey that we never have and we will never have in football. And there was a team that is really working for each other all the time. And the way those guys sang that national anthem when there was, a cappella because the music didn't work in Rio de Janeiro, the way they shout that anthem, for once, made me proud of being Belgian because I don't know the anthem anyway. But it shows that there was a solidarity between those guys and again, among the participants in the ecosystem. So yes, my wish would be for Brussels to stop being the football Red Devils to become the hockey Red Devils.
So what would a model be for that? To take all these different actors that we just talked about and have one structure for growth and working for each other.
So you need the vision from the top, as Zoë explained, but you need also participating from the different participants because only coming from the top will not work. So you need actually a thing, and then suddenly, even if we are only Belgians, suddenly we get in the final of the Olympic Games, and we should have won. So we're still missing one step. But I mean, I never watched hockey, and it's impossible to watch on television. But I really enjoy it when I'm always betting against the football Red Devils because they are losers. So that's the point. So if I just closing on this to change the subject, but I think it's quite revealing about what we need. It's not only about art mentality. It's a mentality of overall mentality. And when we see the different models that you have for the football or the hockey, it worked in the hockey. So why could it not work for the art as well? And I really have the same wish that the quality of that Brussels provide from every kind of layers, every kind of corners is recognized and getting fed for developing and flourishing.
And now it's important to make sure that happens because if not, the moment is gone. Okay, well, thank you. If there's nothing else you want to discuss together, I'm going to turn to the audience. Do we have any questions? Okay, the lady, I can't really see you in the lights, but yes, you. Please stand up.
I have a question for...
Did you mind to stand so we hear you better? Thank you.
Alain, you said it has to be from the top. Who's the top now? Well, would it be institutions or who has to give the leadership?
Sorry?
Who has to give the leadership? You said it has to come from the top and then the...
I think like Zoë said it's very diverse. We don't want to walk like in the communist times in Russia, always in the same direction and voting 99% for the same guy. So that's not what I mean. But we need to kind of focus the energies. Yes, there is better collaboration possible between the galleries, but someone would say, okay, galleries, stop playing around with this one doesn't want to do this one and opening this one. I mean, we need standards. So you want to get our support for NECA, you do it. And sorry, it's a little bit forcing, but we need someone to federalize, structure the energies. So I think that at this moment, it should come from some of authorities. Again, like Zoë, I don't see it coming because it's inherent to the Belgian system. So yeah, I would hope that some energies of different representative. I don't know, the WIELS with Paul Dujardin speaking with some collectors and galleries representative and journalists and trying to do some more initiatives to make it happen. I don't see any other alternative. But I would hope it would be, I definitely would say we need some more impetus and initiative from the public authorities. That's for sure. I mean, the way Brussels is floating without directions, sometimes a little event like the Indisciplined, which I hope will be a success, but it's a one shot. We need something the whole year to kind of promote Brussels. So yes, I would say right now my answer would be the public authorities.
For example, see Visit Brussels, they got an envelope to do some activities, but it's still quite small. And the contemporary art just got now a person that Visit Brussels got a person that now works on contemporary art, but she's also a lawyer, she's not doing this full time. And compared to the money that they give to gastronomy and other sectors, art is still a very small envelope. And they do contribute to Indiscipline, but it's still, not recognized as, well, now, okay, we fall into tourism, but when we want to promote Brussels abroad, this is, for example, something to recognize that art and culture, this is important, and should be also followed by the right means behind.
It's a Brussels asset. We have it, so we don't have to build it. We have it. So why don't we put it more focus on it?
Okay, somebody else? All the way in the back.
Good afternoon. I'm Stephanie from Comediae, Culture and Media Agency Europe. And it's been a very interesting discussion. What's really interesting to me is the composition of the panel. And it really lends itself to a question of, are we really harnessing the potential of this transient nature that Brussels society has, right? So we talk about multiculturalism. When you look at the New York contemporary art scene, for example, which we drew parallels to during this discussion, you see that there is room for highlighting other cultures within that, in terms of creating it as, a scene, a hub. What space is there in Brussels for this type of engagement? Not just homegrown artists out of Brussels, but, for example, the connections that come with the different nationalities that are here for 3 years, 5 years because of the different institutions. I mean, this is something that I think could be a strength of the contemporary art scene here.
I mean, to answer from the point of view of WIELS, we've been looking since we began, but particularly in the past few years, I think it's become a more obvious element of the program in looking at the post-colonial histories of Belgium and how that feeds into contemporary culture and how that is recognized, explored, questioned by the artists living and working here today. In the artists who we program in our exhibition series, we always try and have a mix between Belgians from both language groups, from all 3 language groups, I should say. That's my boss is always reminding me we have a German section too of Belgium, German-speaking section. But also to have international artists from at different points in their career being shown, so that there is very much a diversity in the program. I think that that's also happening more gradually in other exhibition spaces.
The residency that you have, the residents staying after they.
Yeah, our residency program has now hosted over 100 artists who still predominantly come from Western Europe, but we are trying to enlarge that, and in the past few years have created funding for residents to come from the Democratic Republic of Congo as one connection with Belgium. But we're looking also to extend that network further. But many of those residents who come for periods of 3 to 6 to 12 months, many of them stay and have now become very much part of the fabric of the Brussels art scene. But I think in terms of let's say the kind of transient audience that you're also talking about in relation to the people who come and work here for a few years, the kind of expat audience, I find that we still have difficulty kind of connecting with them. I don't know how my other panelists feel, but I don't know if it's to do with the structure of their work or the fact that a lot of people come and work for the week and then leave at weekends and seem to kind of exist within a bit of a bubble of the European institutions and that culture. I don't know. I find it's an audience we could tap into more.
I can say something about it because I worked in the European bubble for 10 years. Besides, because I have a double life, the art life, and I also worked as a lobbyist for cultural sector. And they live completely in a bubble, and I found it very, very incredible how they really have their own life, the place they go out, the neighborhoods, and then they don't engage much. There are people who are educated, that like culture, but no one knows WIELS amongst my friends. who are bureaucrats. It's like insane. I always tell them, I drag them and say, yeah, there's an opening. They only know the baby day now. That's popular. But it's really surprising, and people don't really make much effort also to really look for, even to go outside Brussels, like Antwerp, Ghent, Charleroi, Liège. There's so many things that are also interesting to see, but yeah, I don't know. It's a mentality, I think, that is really hard to change.
So I don't know exactly what kind of cultural involvement you had in mind, but I think what I find remarkable in the statistics I heard from the WIELS is that in the 100 residents, I think something like 50 or more stayed living in Brussels after having finished the 1-year residency. So we're still a very open city from that point of view. I mentioned, many artists moving in Brussels because of the cheap real estate. And those French artists that I helped installing I think they were amazed how easy it find to find a school for their children and so on. So we're still quite open from that point of view. And I think in terms of multiculturalism, I think we're quite open we have that music festival in what's it called, Couleur Café, for example, or I really like that wonderful exhibition which came out of nowhere in the Brass. It was also, what was it, an African
Odyssée Africaine.
It was a high quality show coming out of the forest commune de Forêt, I think. No?
Not really. It came from Fondation Louis Vuitton.
Okay, I didn't know. But it was in their building and I didn't know it. So Louis Vuitton was not tagged on every wall, which is fine. I don't care where it's coming from. It's always the same as long as the art is well. But what did you have in mind as a kind of a cultural involvement? Because it's not clear.
Okay, so there's multiple dimensions that could come out of it just because of the varied audience, the varied panel that we have here, and that's been seen, and some of it has been addressed. I was thinking, in addition to what has been addressed already, the concept of the fact that, for example, you say I'm Jamaican and I'm here, I could connect, with you in terms of bringing artists from Jamaica here. So how easy would it be for someone like myself or someone like my colleague here who has connections in China, for example, in terms of wanting to break into the contemporary art scene? The fact that we may or may not be here for a long time, how would we connect with your, with the system, the actual Brussels system and yeah.
One thing developing, just in a few words to have other questions, but one thing I'm really quite happy to see developing are the residencies. A few years ago, the only one I was aware was the WIELS. And now there are some residencies. Nathalie Guyot, who's just left, has one, and we're kind of developing the residencies. And I would say, check out, it's still very informal. The residency, where the collection is shown, there is a residency for up to 5 artists, very flexible. So it's kind of a first step. Come here, visit through the residencies. I think it's a good access. It's developing.
Yeah, I would say also it depends where you're trying to have access, because we are representatives of interwoven but slightly different positions. So if it's a question of trying to get commercial representation, it's a kind of a different route and a different process and a different aim from trying to get an institutional platform or be part of an exhibition program. So it's kind of a broad question to answer.
Yeah, if I would add in, I would say knowing who you're going to talk to, of course, and what they do, and finding someone who feels like a good partner for the thing that you're excited about developing, that's already key, because I found way before I worked in the arts that Brussels was very open in every part of the artistic or creative community. And if that was places like Recycle Art or Cinema Nova or the skate park or everywhere, it's a really easy city to talk to people and to get to know them. So that's one side on the kind of social level. And then on the professional level, what annoys me often is when people come to me and they don't know anything about me. They didn't do any work to understand what I'm investing all of my time into. And then they come with what they do and they wave it in front of me as if I should just fall in love. I think you just got to know, what is it that you're working with and who's a good partner for that? and then try to have a conversation. And I find people here really open for such conversation.
Yeah, I think, it's a very it's very unpretentious art scene.
Absolutely.
It's very accessible, small scale, and yet exciting. So it's very easy to get to meet people in a way that in like Paris and London it just isn't. And I don't know if that's scale or if it's mentality or Belgianness. But one thing I wanted to come back to that you mentioned right at the beginning, and then we didn't really talk about further with the art schools, because we've talked about attracting people in terms of attracting visitors, attracting collectors. But I think that the art schools are kind of at an interesting moment right now in Brussels, partly because of the reputation, the hype that we've been talking about, but also because of what's happening around in the surrounding countries. So I was on a jury for the end of year exams for Lucca School of Arts. And there they were really saying they're having an increase of applications from the UK, from the Netherlands. And this is partly because people are kind of waking up to the fact that Brussels is a very interesting place to be, but it's also because it's affordable, and not just in housing. It's also because the education is still relatively affordable. And in the UK now, to study at university or to study at art school is just becoming increasingly impossible. I calculated recently how much it would cost someone to now follow the educational trajectory that I had, and I reckon it would be easily within the realm of about 90,000 euros to do one undergraduate degree, one master's degree, and a couple of internships if you're studying in the UK. That, dramatically reduces the range of people who can go into curating, which is becoming increasingly professionalized, as is being an artist, where people are more and more expected to have undergraduate degrees, master degrees, even PhDs. So I think that the fact that more people, not everybody, but more people can afford to go to art school here, to go to university, to study art history, to study in the cultural field, because it doesn't cost £9,000 per year, or in the Netherlands it's still a bit more affordable, but I think is also heading towards more and more fee-paying system. This is also an amazing advantage, an amazing richness that should be encouraged and maintained, and I hope it doesn't go the same way that the UK is going.
Yeah, that's true across the board. Philosophy at the University of Leuven, one of the top schools in Europe, and people come and study for nearly free. Amazing. Somebody else would like to ask a question? If your hand is up, I can't see it through the lights. And if no hands are up, then I guess thank you very much. No? Okay. Okay.